I grew faster than I knew how to organize. Okay. And that forced me into,
Usually.
yeah, that's everybody. But there are ways to, how do I say this? There are ways to marginally increase your passivity. Even for me, I've worked really hard to get to just make slight changes, slight investments that increasingly build me out of the machine, okay? Or that make the running of it easier. I'll give you a really good example. When I first started, and this is going to sound old hat to a lot of people, but of course, when I first started, I just had my leases on my laptop as like Word documents, and then I was printing them out and going to sign the leases with tenants, okay? And I'd give them keys when we signed the lease, or maybe we'd sign beforehand, and I'd meet them later on to give them keys. And then I'd explain to them how to not destroy the unit that they were renting from me, what the expectations were. I'd remind them that if anything went wrong, they needed to call me, all this stuff. And then when my wife started helping me out, she's like, "We're not doing paper leases anymore. I'm sorry." And she tends to push the tech bubble for me, and I don't do it naturally. Obviously, the answer is you get DocuSign or Dot Loop or whatever. So now we just don't do paper leases anymore. So that was a shift that ended up saving me time. But honestly, I was doing renovations, being a landlord, parenting, and all this stuff, but I didn't have enough time set aside to figure out how to even implement like a DocuSign account. And thankfully, my wife came in and was like, "Stop. We're doing this differently." Okay, that's an example. DocuSign costs money, right? It costs a little bit of money to have a DocuSign account, but that shift has freed up more of my time and has made me more independent, because now I know how to just create a PDF, drag it to DocuSign, send that to the tenant, and the tenant doesn't want to print it out. None of my tenants own printers. Yeah, so they need to be able to DocuSign, and that's how we roll. I'll give you another example. We used to have proprietary applications. So I had my own application that I had cobbled together from boilerplate stuff on the internet. And then the procedure was tenants they'd see the place, they would want to apply. I would email them a PDF attachment of a application. Again, they would either have to have Adobe that could type in text insert on a PDF application, or they'd have to print it out, or they'd have to like type in their answers to a document and then send that back to me, okay? And then I would have to run a tri-bureau credit check on those tenants, a background check, and all that stuff. And if it was a multiple application scenario, if it was paper, I'd have to shred the applicants that I didn't take, because it has their social security number, their driver's license number, banking info. That's a lot of freaking work.
Yeah.
But at the time when I was still doing that, I wasn't ready to hire a full-time property manager, because I couldn't afford to pay the fee that a property manager was going to charge me. Mm-hmm. So the answer is, of course, I just started using Zillow for applications. So now I advertise on Zillow. I have all my tenants, if they want to apply, they'll respond to a Zillow ad. We do the showing. If you want to take this, fill out the application on Zillow and then direct it to me. Now, they don't pay me for the application. They pay Zillow once. Zillow runs their tri-bureau credit check. Zillow does their background and everything, and then they just send me the results. And again, it costs a little bit of money to have a Zillow listing now, like it's a per week charge, but I get maximum exposure, because that's still how all my tenants are shopping for apartments, is on Zillow. And I've outsourced and delegated a large portion of the work that I used to do in vetting and approving tenants. So if you're listening right now and you're not yet ready to turn everything over to a property management company the way I wasn't, and I guess I'm still not yet ready to do, that's a how, I get it. That's a how solution to what you ultimately want to be a who solution. But if you can't afford the who solution yet, there are little ways to slightly improve the management of your rental portfolio that will save you time and buy that time back for you.
I love that. I love that, man. And you and I started this conversation with me. I just finished my onboarding call with my virtual assistant that's starting full-time this week. Yeah. And then me and Bryce were both going back and forth. And I was like, everyone talks about how easy delegation is. They're like, "Oh, this part of my business, I just delegated out." And I'm like, whoa, okay. So let me take this intricate thing that I do, and now how do I systematize this? How do I develop a process around it, create a Loom video on it,
right?
Teach someone else how to do it? Yeah.
The answer might be that you have to take it apart and that takes some work, you may have to take it apart because there could be part of that process that you can 100% automate without involving a person. And if that's possible, that's usually the best choice, is to automate something that doesn't require an employee or a person, because people are messy. They screw stuff up. You have to explain it to them 4 times. They get a different job. You're not a good enough motivator as their boss. So I think a lot of tasks or job descriptions, take them apart, figure out if any part of it can be digitized. And then the next step, I think, is figure out if any of it can be outsourced to a vendor who does it better.